I'm drinking Dr. Pepper and it's the creamy coconut flavor. It's like the limited edition for this summer. It says it's a limited edition, but I think the strawberries and cream Dr. Pepper last summer was also marketed as limited edition, and they've just continued to sell that. So personally, I think that's a lie. And hopefully it is because this is the best soda I've ever tasted ever in my entire life. Get it if you can find it, although it is impossible to find. No, I'm not sponsored by Dr. Pepper. I just do think it is the best soda. So, these past couple of weeks, especially after Fantasy High junior year ended, all I've been able to think about is Dungeons and Dragons all the time between Dimension 20 and another certain D&D podcast I am obsessed with. It's just been total brain rot constantly. And so I wanted to make a tier list of all of the main cast's PCs. So main cast, I mean Lou Wilson, Emily Axford, Brian Brian Murphy. Um, I didn't plan on naming all of them, but now I have to. Ali Beardsley, Zach Oyama, and who am I missing? Siobhan Thompson. Anyway, so I'm going to rank all of them for the seasons that they have been in, specifically the seasons that they have all been in together, especially since I haven't seen all of the other seasons. I've seen most of the Dimension 20 campaigns, but there's a couple that I just haven't caught up with yet. This is Fantasy High, Unsleeping City, Crown of Candy, Starstruck Odyssey, and Never After. So I have my own personal tier ranking, which is my baby Pookie Meow Meow best character. That's pretty self-explanatory. These are my favorite little characters in the entire world. I wish I could have them in a jar and shake them around all the time. Then we have This Is Me, Who Sold You My Likeness. These are the characters that, whether I like it or not, they are me and I relate to them so, so much. And so, no matter how much I like them as a character, I do have like a very special personal connection to them. Then Good Character, No Personal Connection. It's pretty much what it says on the tin. Then we have Meh. This is going to be very few characters, but there's a couple of these who I just feel very meh about. And then It's Complicated. And there's a very specific few that are in the It's Complicated section, and I'll explain it when I get to them. So first up, we have Fabian Seacaster himself. Now, a little thing that all of my friends who know about my Dimension 20 obsession know about me is I love Lou Wilson more than life itself. Any Lou Wilson character is instantly my favorite of the season, even if I can recognize that they're not the best character of the season, or they're not actually like my favorite of the season, and I have another character who I like more. Ultimately, the Lou Wilson character will always be my baby Pookie Meow Meow best character because it's Lou Wilson and I love him so much. So I do think pretty much all of his characters are going to be in the top, but I'll try to be as fair as possible. But Fabian Seacaster was the character who started this line of thinking for me. I became so parasocially obsessed with Fabian Seacaster when I first got into Fantasy High years and years ago. Known fact about me is Studo. I actually was into College Humor before I was into anything on Dropout. I was into College Humor before Dropout was even a thought in any of these people's minds. So I got into Fantasy High when it was first coming out and when it had first been announced, and I love Fabian and have loved Fabian since his creation. So he absolutely has to go in this top category. I also think that Fabian has he's such a good character, and there's so many layers to him. There's so much that's so crunchy with him. And it's been really fun to watch him develop over all of the Fantasy High seasons. So yeah. So our first character goes in that very top category. It's going to be very hard for me to not just throw everyone in the top category because ultimately I do love all of these characters so much because they're played by some of my favorite people, actors ever. Next, we have Adine Evernet. I love Adine. She's from a family with a lot of pressure, with complex dynamics, which in high school was something I related to a lot. She kind of has that whole anxiety arc in freshman year that I really related to in high school. In high school, Adine would have gone in the second category for me. However, as the seasons have gone on, I have related to Adine a lot less, and I think that's also as I've matured as a person. She's just not someone who I find myself relating to all the time now. But I still love her. I still love everything in junior year. I think it was really fun to watch her like party and be party wizard and all of that. So I'm gonna put her in this third category. But in high school, that that was so me. Um, Fig, dang it. I love Fig. I love Fig so much. And as the seasons have gone on, I have only loved Fig more and more. She's just such a perfect character. She is so in freshman year, she is a very typical teenage girl character of like this rebellion. And Emily Axford, I think, is so good at taking very like flat female stereotypes in media and just exploring them and picking them apart and creating such beautiful, complex characters that are an fuck you to the people that created these stereotypes and are trying to fit women in these tiny little boxes. And she's just so good at all of that. I think season one Fig is very similar to a character in the other D&D podcast I'm currently really obsessed with, Dungeons and Daddies, which is Scary Marlowe. I think season one Fig is incredibly scary. And Beth May takes that character in a very different direction than I think Fig ends up going in, because I think Fig, while she realizes that she's created this persona for herself and this persona isn't everything that she is, she also doesn't see like an issue with herself choosing to present in this way. Scary realizes that, oh, she's putting up this like very defensive front, but that's actually not who she is. Well, I think Fig is putting up this really defensive front, and the way she presents kind of is who she is. And that's not a problem if she does just kind of fit this stereotype. And I think that's fun that she just is like the full realization of this stereotype. I think Fig is just such an excellent character. And I think everything in sophomore year with Ida was so, so good. And I think the stuff in junior year was also, it really showed like almost like, not to get too into it, but almost a dissection of Emily Axford herself. I'll get into this later in the list with Saccharina Frostwhip, the most controversial Emily character. But I think Fig really struggles in junior year with trying to figure out who she truly is, which has kind of always been her thing. But the way in junior year of like, oh, I am someone who is so capable and smart and powerful, and there's so many different paths for me in my life because of that. How how do I even begin to decide where I want to go, especially when I don't always feel like I'm smart and capable and powerful. And all that to say, I love Fig. Um, and all of that ranting about her, I think that there are certain parts of myself that I see in Fig, but ultimately, like Fig was just never really me. I've never been cool enough to be Fig, I don't think. But I do think, especially because of the lesbian thing, she's kind of the oh, I love her and Ida so much. I will never get over her and Ida. I think she might have to go in the top category because I think I do have a personal connection to her, but like not second category level. So yeah. Next up we have Gorgug. I okay. Gorgug and I have always had like, I don't know, just a weird relationship. I have always loved Gorgug because he's in the fantasy high group. So like I love all of them at the end of the day. But Gorgug has always been the one I've related to the least and the one who I've just had the least connection with. He's Zach characters are always not always actually, because we'll see later in this list as he kind of like explores the types of characters he can play more, but they are always typically at least like this himbo character. And I think but I do think that Gorgug has had some really interesting characterization over the seasons. I think his arc in junior year is especially really strong, with him having to take so many classes at once, because I think like his intelligence is definitely something that he's always doubted about himself. Sophomore year, I don't know. I liked seeing his artificer stuff starting in sophomore year, but I feel like he just kind of faded to the background then. Of course, he did have like the rock moment with the it's Gorgug, keep going. Or I'm not sure if that's the exact wording. It's been a while since I've watched sophomore year. But yeah, I think he's a really good character. And I love him. I don't want to say meh for Gorgug because I don't think Gorgug is meh. I am going to all of the fantasy high characters are going to have to go in the top three just because I know them the most and I've had the most time with them. And ultimately, they are really special to me. And so, yeah, he's a good character, but I have no personal connection to him. Okay. So, Kristen Appleby's is where things start getting complicated because if this were just off of freshman year, and honestly, if this were just off of me watching the first half of sophomore year, I would be like, fuck Kristen Appleby's. I didn't like Kristen Appleby's for a lot of my time watching Fantasy High. And then second half of sophomore year, I realized, oh no, that is because so many of Allie Beardsley's characters are very similar to me. And I think that there are definitely some ways that Kristen Appleby's and I differ. Specifically, I think she's much more of a lesbian than I am. I see a lot of myself in Kristen, and I think that's why I haven't liked her as much. Also, part of the reason I didn't like Kristen was because she and Fabian in the first two seasons, especially, have a bit more of a tense dynamic than any of the others in the group. And I always get very defensive over Fabian because he is my baby boy. But I I have really grown to love Kristen. And I think in junior year, especially, junior year, I think the main characters, it's that's not how this works, but also if there were to be main characters, I think that season three, the main characters are really Kristen and then Fig. But yeah, Kristen just has such a beautiful arc, and I think Allie has made a lot of decisions with some of their characters. And I'll talk about this especially with Never After, but they have made some decisions with their characters just being silly and funny. And we love them, but I think they've started like regretting just being silly and funny with some of their characters instead of like actually getting into their depth. And I think Kristen Appleby's does have so much unexplored trauma because freshman year, wow, she does like I don't know, work through the religious thing, that's still really hard to be the chosen one of Helio and then just completely separate yourself from that entire community and just like move out of your house. That's huge. And I think sophomore year, there was an emphasis on Kristen being just kind of silly and not as complex. And so I think that's a lot of where I started disliking Kristen as a character. But I really like her. Again, even when I'm like, why are you being like that? Why are you being stupid? Now I know why. Because Allie like really explored that and explored the moments where Kristen is just putting up like, oh, I'm being goofy and I'm not engaging with the issues I know that I have and I'm hiding behind this. So we got a really cool look into her psyche this season. And I think because of all of my complex feelings, I don't know. Yeah, I definitely would have put her in It's Complicated a couple of years ago, but I think at this point I can recognize that I see enough of myself in Kristen that that is why I get so annoyed with her. And so for all of those reasons, I am going to put her in This Is Me Who Sold You My Likeness, even though I don't think that is as true for Kristen as it is the next character, and that is Riz Gutgak himself, ladies and gentlemen. Riz is actually me, and the reason I made that second category is specifically for Riz. I love Riz so much, and he is so me. And over and like watching freshman year, I was like, yeah, he's kind of me. And when I watched freshman year, it was also before I figured out a lot of things about myself. And so any of the similarities I felt towards Riz, I didn't feel as strongly as I felt towards, say, Adine. Now that I have transitioned more and I know more about my gender, I look at Riz and I look at the way that Murph describes his like stupid little oval goggles that he puts on, and I look at the glasses that I've chosen for myself. And I know deep in my soul that I am unfortunately, not even unfortunately because I love him, I am fortunately Riz Gutgak. And I say this with pride and love in my heart for this character. Next up, we have Pete moving into Unsleeping City. Unsleeping City has some characters who I really just don't care about at all, or like really dislike. And then it has some characters who I am so insane about, and I have never been able to stop thinking about them ever since the season came out. So, Pete is one of those characters. Pete is as like, and I hate to have three he's so me in a row, but unfortunately, you gave me the most me character and then two of Ali Beardsley's characters that they developed while discovering their own gender identity. And so I do very obviously have to put them all in the This Is So Me. Pete is so me. I think regularly about that scene right at the beginning of the show when he's like stalking his ex on Instagram and Brennan's like, "Oh, you see a picture of her with like a new guy." And Allie's like, "Is the guy is he cis? Is he just like a guy?" And Brennan's like, "Yeah. You go to his profile and you can tell that he's cis." And Allie's like, "Cool. That's really awesome to hear." I think about that all the time. I also just really love the care that they all have for a trans mask character. I think that Pete is so interesting, and Allie and Brennan have worked together to create a character that just feels like the trans male experience. And I think about the scene where he sees his dad and his dad goes to call him his dead name and the bubbles come out of his mouth, and it makes me sob every time I listen to it. It's just, and then also that parallel of like the gender identity stuff, which like even when we start season one of Unsleeping City, Pete has mostly, even while he's still like struggling with it and like dealing with aspects of transitioning, he knows himself. But then we see him thrown into the Unsleeping City and we see him thrown into his role. It's this really cool parallel to see how he deals with just being thrown into the deep end of all of this magic and all of this strife and all of these problems. And even though Kingston is someone who, on like face value, has only ever been nice to him, then he finds out that Kingston would kill him. And I love Kingston, and I'll get to him in a second. But that's so much. And Allie just deals with it all so well. And I just love it so much. And I think about Pete every day. And I also think about Kingston Brown, man about town. I love Kingston. Kingston is another really solid Lou Wilson character. And I would love to like hear more about how Lou Wilson developed Kingston, because Kingston definitely feels like one of the most just like real guys out of all of them. Like Kingston is like people that actually exist. And I just love him so much. He's such a complicated character. We get so much with like him in the first season and like pushing away the people that he cares about and having so much on his shoulders and making the wrong decisions a lot of the time. I yeah, I just think he's such a great character. I love him so much. He's my baby, he's my Pookie, he's my meow meow. I love him. Next up, we have Sophia Bicicleta. I love her. This is a really good, underrated Emily Axford character. Sometimes I forget about Sophia Bicicleta, and then I remember her, and then instantly my life is better again. Lately I've been getting a lot of TikTok clips of The Nanny, the show The Nanny, which is a show I have never actually watched, but from TikTok clips, it looks great and fun and like something I would hypothetically enjoy, except for the fact that I cannot actually watch sitcoms. I can just consume them uh on TikTok. But Sophia really reminds me of Fran Fine from The Nanny. And I love that for her. I love her so much. I love everything with Dale. I think that's such a compelling storyline in the first season. And I think the second season, my biggest issue with Kingston is I do think that when we get to the second season of The Unsleeping City, and this is kind of true for a lot of the characters who who remain the same from season to season. I think that Kingston kind of just doesn't have a lot to do in the second season. I mean, he does things, but his character doesn't develop a lot more in the second season. Like he did the bulk of his character development in the original on Sleeping City. And so the second season, like he's helpful, he's good to have around, but he doesn't develop a lot. Sophia, I feel like still develops a lot in the second season, and we still see a lot from her learning and growing, and I think that's beautiful. And I love her. But I think I'm gonna put her in good character, no personal connection, because I just don't have much of a personal connection to her, but I think she's amazing and fabulous and I adore her. Riki Matsui is also a great character. I think that Riki is definitely a character that could end up going in meh, and honestly might go in meh just to even things out a little bit because I think on his own, I mean, he as a character is developed to be like a little bit meh. He's just like a little bit bland and a little bit silly. I think so much about his relationship with Esther. And if like another season of Unsleeping City were to come out, I would definitely end up thinking about them so much more. The only reason I don't think about them as much anymore is just because I haven't consumed any content about them lately. But the second that I get like even a scrap, I like start thinking about them again. And it's like, oh my God, they're just like one of the best straight couples to ever do it. It's just so deeply, deeply romantic, everything that happens in season one. And I think about like when the curse is finally broken and she finally finds out that like she can have a relationship with him and like I forget like what exactly is said, but it's she like leaps on him or something and it's so I love them. I love them. And then I also think about his relationship with Cody in the second season, and that is very funny. And I laugh every time. But I don't know. And it's like his build isn't super interesting either. The most interesting things for me about Ricky are his relationships with other people. So I love him still because it's not that I don't love any of these characters, but guys, please don't like hate crime me. But I might have to put him in meh. I'm really sorry. I don't want to do that. I don't. I might have to though, just because someone has to go there. Anyway, next up, we got Kugrash. And guys, I sometimes forget about Kugrash just because, like, when am I thinking about this giant rat man? And then I remember, like, everything to do with his story, and it's like, wow, actually, Brian Murphy is, like, not capable of well, we'll get to Crown of Candy, and actually my opinion's something about, but we'll get there. But Kugrash is, like, so is kind of a great character. Actually, I love Crash. I fuck with him so hard. And everything about his backstory and Wally is so like heartbreaking and stuff. And it's just like, wow, this is such a good, well thought out character. Like I'm just really impressed by everything about Crash. And like it's really like his ending is also really heartbreaking, but also like very satisfying because like it feels like everything that needed to be wrapped up with him has been wrapped up. He was very much like a character who was created for like one purpose, and that was the first season of Unsleeping City. There's another character on here that I think kind of has like a similar fate to Kugrash, and I'll get to her. But yeah, I love Kugrash. He's great. I'm gonna put him in good character, no personal connection, because I think his storyline was just so well developed. And yeah, he's solid. He's solid. Next, we have Cody Night Angel Walsh. I hate Cody. I hate this man. He's awful, but also I know the unfortunate thing, and part of the reason why I hate him so much, is I know that if I knew Cody, we would be friends. And there's even a world where I might have a crush on him, and that's really embarrassing for me. And because of how embarrassing that is for me, I'm putting him in It's Complicated. I think he's a good character. I think he's well developed. I get it. I get what Brian Murphy was trying to do. I think Murph succeeded in what he was trying to do, but I think he succeeded too hard. And the character makes me really upset. And I don't like him. So he's going in, It's Complicated. Oh, Misty Moore, the woman you are, I would react just like Pete if I were in his shoes. I love Misty Moore. She is a goddess. She is a fae. She's everything. She's perfect. And I love everything in like the season one finale that happens because of her. I love Sondheim on a Bear. I love all that shit. She is just so iconic, and perfect and beautiful. Yeah, I don't have like a lot of specific things on Missy. I think that like everything with her and Pete is very funny. I love the like epilogue that the two that Siobhan and Allie kind of do, like about them and about their relationship. And like of course it's very Eowyn and Fabian, but like I love that for them. And I wish she had been in the second season. Uh, so I think I'm gonna put her in my baby Pookie Meow Meow best character. I think she's excellent. And I'm also a sucker for like Midsummer Night's Dream. I love Midsummer Night's Dream. I love all of the Fae stuff. So I think the exploration into that and Siobhan's familiarity with all of that lore is super cool. Okay, I think I'm like for sure gonna mess up the pronunciation because I don't remember how it's said. But Iga Lisa Whiskey, guys, that cannot be how it's pronounced. Like I guarantee, it cannot be. But I didn't. I'm going to be so real, guys. I'm not a fake fan. Guys, I swear, I promise. I barely remembered she existed, and I also low-key thought her name was Olga when I was thinking back, and I remembered she did exist. That's on me. I am maybe going to put her in meh because of that. And I feel really bad to have her and Ricky in the same spot because I like Ricky more than I like her. I just don't even really care about her at all. I feel so bad saying that, guys. I might have to. Is that cheating? Will you guys be mad at me if I do that? I might have to do that. Yeah, I don't know. The dragon stuff was cool. I liked the stuff with the dragon, but she just didn't do it for me. If you are a big Ega, Ega? If you're a big Ega lover, comment down below. Tell me why I'm wrong. Tell me why I'm wrong, please. I want you to tell me why I'm wrong. Okay, thanks. Liam Wilhelmina. Moving into a Crown of Candy. Crown of Candy used to be my favorite season. I'm not sure if it's still, well, I don't think it would. No, my current favorite is A Court of Fey and Flowers, most likely. I just think that's such a well done season and they all kill it so hard. But Crown of Candy, I think, is like one of the best seasons and the emotion that they capture. And Lou like acknowledges this. Lou is like the emotion that I felt while filming A Crown of Candy is not something I would ever want to experience again, which is so, so fair. But I think it makes for just like one of the best D&D campaigns like ever live played. And I just think it's so excellent. So up first we have Liam Wilhelmina. Liam is a really good character, but Liam falls into the trap of issues that I have with most of the characters of this season, which is the treatment of the Rocks family after the introduction of Saccharina Frostwhip. And I will get to that because I have possibly the most nuanced opinions, and I think the most correct opinions on this issue of anyone I've ever seen talk about it. I'm sure many other smart people share this opinion with me, but I think that kind of everyone reacted to the introduction of Saccharina Frostwhip in the wrong way. And I'll get to that when I get to her. I think that Liam kind of like turns against the rocks after her introduction, which really isn't fair because of how much they all, especially Amathar, have done for him. And I like get it to some extent because I get that like Amathar is not perfect. Amathar did make a mistake when it came to Saccharina, but also I let me not rant too much about something that isn't even relevant to this character. Liam, like I said, he has some issues, he has some problems, but I love him at the end of the day. I think he's just like a very fun character. I think the moment with Peppermint Preston when he is sadly put to rest, I think is so heartbreaking. I think he and Ruby have a really good relationship after everything with the Jet. Yeah, I just think he's a really solid character, but I am like kind of upset with him. So honestly, maybe it's complicated. No, no, I think it's good character, no personal connection, because I'm not as upset with Liam, because ultimately Liam is a child, and ultimately Liam has so many of his own problems going on during this. So I'm not as upset about Liam as I am another character in here. And I'll get to him. I'll get to him. Next up, we have Jet. I love Jet. I love Jet. She was a great character. She was so funny. Emily had put, so I don't, why am I doing like a southern accent? Anyway, no, Emily did such a great job with this character. I love how the two of them, how Emily and Siobhan decided to play characters who were twins. I thought that was so sweet. I thought that was so cute. I loved it. I loved it. And I love Jet so much. I thought everything she had with the cheat with the artichoke. What was that? I'm forgetting who that guy was. The like prince that she had the flirty thing with, and she like gave him his own whatever. Anyway, I thought she was so great, and her death. Anytime I watch her death, I sob. I sob hysterically. It's not even funny at all in any way, shape, or form. It makes me so so sad every time I think about it. And actually, she's going in the top row because of that, because she did nothing wrong. She did everything right. She did everything she could possibly ever do right. And I love her. I love her so much. Next up, we have Ruby. Now, Ruby is where we start to move into what I think made this season so good and so crunchy. Ruby is such a good, complex character. She is Complicated Women. She is the Complicated Woman podcast. The Complicated Woman podcast is actually Saccharina Frostwhip, but again, we will get to her. But Ruby is like another really good like teenage girl. Like she just feels so real. Like every single choice, I'm like, yes, Siobhan, this is the way a teenage girl would react to this situation, especially the teenage princess who's been like pampered her whole life. Like, this is the way she would be reacting to all of this. And I don't think she did anything wrong either. I love we're about to get to Amithar, and boy, oh boy, do I have things to say about Amithar. But I think Amithar, for all of my love for him, I do think he did things wrong. I don't think Ruby did anything wrong. I think she was completely in the right. She was put into the shittiest of possible situations, and I don't think it's her fault at all that she felt resentment towards Sakurina because of that. That's like it wasn't Sakurina's fault, but it also wasn't Ruby's fault, and they should have never been pitted against each other. And that moment, and it's such a good Brennan storytelling decision. And I love when Brennan is like, actually, we're going to do something a little bit different, a little bit of something that like isn't included in basic D&D, because I think it like makes sense for the story in this moment with the like pieces of paper where they both write like what their decision is to do to each other if they're going to like attack each other or not, and neither of them attack each other. That's such such a good moment. It's so good. And I love everything about Ruby. She's so good. She's so, so good. And guys, now we get to the Complicated Men podcast. I'm creating the Complicated Men podcast, and it's about Amithar Rocks. The whole podcast is about Amithar. Because I am so not okay. Every day of my life, I'm not okay about Amithar because Amithar was made king when he was never supposed to be king. He was the last in line of his entire family. And that's so fucked up. For the season to start with that as just a piece of knowledge that this entire world is built on, that he was the last in line, and all four, four, count them four, of his sisters died. And so now he is king. And not only that, but he is married and has two children with one of his sister's girlfriends and betrothed. That's insane. That's psychological warfare. So, no, Amithar is not perfect. And Amithar did do something horrible in abandoning Sakurina and her mother. And he did do something horrible in trying to cover it up. And he wasn't always the best to Sakurina. He was, in fact, quite awful to Sakurina and some of the people around him when he was a grown man and when he shouldn't have been acting like that. But for this heart, like gut punch piece of information to just be the very cornerstone of his backstory is insane. And therefore I cannot fault him for I can fault him. I can be like, this is messed up that you would act this way, Amithar. But that is so, so horrible. And so I have endless amounts of sympathy for Amithar. And I also think he's just so strong. While he makes mistakes, he's genuinely a good man who cares about his family and cares about keeping them safe. And the main reason that I think he's so awful to Sakurina is because he sees the threat that she has not on him, not on him as king. He couldn't care about being king. He never wanted to be king. He wasn't supposed to be king. He cares about the impact that she could have on Ruby. And that's so, and that's so sad. That's so sad. I love Amithar and everything with Calroy. Calroy, the feelings I have about that fucking piece of cake. There's like a really embarrassing, these are all archived, but on my Spotify, I have a ton of playlists that I made in high school when I made like playlists for pieces of media I really liked, which I will occasionally still do, but like not in the way I used to. So I actually have a playlist for every single Fantasy High character, but I also have a playlist for Calroy, basically like, fuck you, bitch, I hate you, bitch. You're the worst. You bitch. And I think that Lou played all of the stuff with Cowboy. Also, Lou's like best. acting comes out in this season, which it is like, Lou, I'm so sorry you had to go through all of this, but also like I need you to know that this is like some of the best acting ever done. And I truly, truly believe this. Some of the best acting ever done, like in like a D&D thing for sure, but also just like pure, like I just think he's so, so talented and he does such a good job at portraying this severely, severely messed up man. And so he definitely goes in the top category. Without a doubt, without a doubt. Unfortunately, that's my man. I will never, the people want me to hate you, Amathar, and I will never let them. I will never let them. Next up, this would actually be a great transition into Theobald. If I could then begin my Theobald rant, but I won't. I'll start on Lepan, who I feel better about. Lepan is also so deeply tragic. This season was rough, guys. This was a rough season in terms of bitches dying. My dog is right here and she is like panting. And I'm not sure if she wants to go inside. If she wants to go, oh, she's laying down. I also thought there were so many interesting things set up with him and like everything with the Sugar Plum Fairy. I thought that was all really cool. I think that some of Brennan's best storytelling is done in his depiction of the church in Crown of Candy and in the Calorum universe. I think it's all so so good and I think Lepan could I think Lepan could have like gotten us into some of that really interesting dissection of the church that I think we really end up seeing in the Ravening War season. Um, but we miss out on a little bit here after his death. But yeah, I think he's great. Again, his death makes me cry like a little baby. And I also think that it's really cool that Lepan has such a cool dynamic with Theobald before Theobald becomes awful. So actually I'm going to put Lepan in the third category and then I'm going to move on to Theobald because Theobald is he's not one of my most hated characters because that's untrue. I don't hate Theobald. I hate what Theobald became, and I it really, really upsets me. I think that Theobald was such a good character, and like I understand that when he was first introduced, there was something problematic about his utter devotion to Amathar and his unwillingness to like kind of break free from his very like rigid everything. And I understand that his relationship with I'm forgetting her name, but the bitch in Sakurina's army is really great. And all of that is really great. And I really like all of that. And that entire storyline is awesome. My problem with Theobald is everything that happens after Amathar is like dethroned and there's like the whole discussion between like oh who's like the real royalty and where do our loyalties lie with Sakurina or with the Rocks family and Theobald chooses Sakurina, which I get wanting to be on Sakurina's side because she has done nothing wrong and she's shown herself to be capable and all of that. But you are not just like Amathar's like bodyguard and like and like his army and whatever. You're his friend. You two have been friends forever, and you know what Amathar is going through and how hard all of this is on him, and you don't show him support. Instead, everyone is supporting Sakurina. And I just don't get that in this season, how people, how the players went like swung so far in the direction of Sakurina. And I don't think it's like, I don't think like any of the actors did a bad job in making their characters decide that. I just think it's like not something I'm upset with the actors about. It's something I'm upset with the characters about. I think it makes sense and I can see why those characters did those things. It's just really upsetting to me that Theobald would behave that way. And it and I know he and Amathar are able to kind of like repair their relationship a little bit by the end, but like I don't know. It's just a really hard moment for me, and I don't like it, and it's never sat right with me. And I'm putting him in It's Complicated because it is complicated, and like I don't fuck with that shit. Theobald, it's on site. It is on site. Okay. So Cumulus is hard for me. And it's not even hard because I know where I'm going to put him. It's just complicated. Because Cumulus, I think, has the best character design out of anyone from Crown of Candy. I think he's also one of the coolest character designs out of any of these characters. I love Cumulus's character design. I love the concept. I love everything about Cumulus, except for the way he's played, and like the actual character. I don't know. He just didn't really stand out for me. Like I'm thinking back to the season and I'm thinking about what he did, and like yeah, I remember like things and stuff, but I'm just not particularly like excited about any of it. I don't know. I like him. I think he's cool. I love the cotton candy, but I don't know. He wasn't a super standout character for me. Next up, we have the woman of the hour. We have Saccharina Frostwhip. Yes, that's right. So I know I said I don't think the players reacted, or not the players, but I don't like how a lot of the characters reacted to Saccharina, but that doesn't mean that I'm not incredibly pro Saccharina. I don't like the way that the characters reacted because they prioritize Saccharina above the Rocks family, and not just Amethor, but also Ruby. And I think they kind of like replaced the Rocks and their devotion to the Rocks with devotion to Saccharina instead of thinking critically and maybe being like, oh, maybe like the unhealthy devotion I had to like one person wasn't good because it was an unhealthy devotion and not just because of who that person was. Like that, like what? I think Saccharina is flawless. I think Saccharina, like all of the critiques that the general public and like men had for Saccharina, those are the reasons I love her. I think she's such a good Emily Axford character, and it's so sexy to me how well Emily Axford knows the game to be able to play a character like Saccharina. That first scene when she comes in and she's just like wins so spectacularly is just like the most iconic thing in the entire world. And while yeah, I just think she's like such a perfect character, and I think everything about her backstory is amazing. And like this season would not be the same. As heartbreaking as it was for Jet to die, this season would not have been the same without Saccharina, and I would not have wanted this season to happen if not for Saccharina. I'm so happy that she existed in this season, and I love her. I love her so much. I think just because of my passion for her and just because of how badly she got treated, I am going to put her in my baby Pookie Meow Meow best character. Because yeah, Emily Axford, you slayed. You're icon of all time.
Another day, another sleigh.
So yesterday when I was filming, it started raining, and so I had to go back inside. So let's get back into it. Next up, we have Starstruck Odyssey. So starting off with Norman Takamori, I have so much to say about all of these other characters. I'm just gonna make this nice and simple. Norman goes in It's Complicated. It's Complicated was actually a category made specifically for Norman. I think Norman is like a very cool character, but A, we just saw literally none of him throughout the season. And also B, the entire point of his character is he sucks. So yeah, I thought it was really interesting how they did start to get a little bit like towards the end of the season into the thing of like, well, like how bad is it that we've just like taken away this man's entire autonomy because we personally don't like him and have replaced him with like an entire other consciousness. And so I kind of like the like dual consciousness decision compromise that they come to at the end. It's fun, but yeah, like I really don't have many opinions on him. I think he like is complex and his backstory is cool, and Zach definitely put a lot of thought into it, but like at the end of the day, I still don't like him. So next up, fuck you. Next up, we have Barry. I love Barry. I love Barry so much. Barry is immediately going in my baby Pookie Meow Meow best character. Honestly, that's going to be a lot of the Starstruck characters. I, yeah, I think Barry is so great. I love, like, it's just such a different type of character for Murph. And I know that, like, there's there's like a certain stereotype about the characters that Murph plays, but not like all characters that he plays are Riz. Like there's Kugrash, there's fucking Cody. Like he plays different types of characters, but Barry specifically, like he committed so hard to that role with like his appearance and everything. He became Barry when he played him, and it was just so beautiful and amazing to watch. And the Barry scenes were honestly like some of the most emotional for me throughout the season. So yeah, I like him a lot. Next, okay, so we're in another situation where we have a Lou character, and I like it's so hard because I know that all of Lou's characters are going to be in this top row, and that's not my fault. And you need to understand that that's not my fault. Like in my life contract, I like part of it is like I'm just going to be in love with Lou Wilson. Like he is going to be like the perfect man to me and for me. Every day of my life. So, like, it's really not my fault that they're all there. And Gunny is definitely his character that I not like the least, but I don't have like a huge personal connection to Gunny. I do love, love, love his gambling thing. I think that's so fun. I think he's really real, and just like the sheer amount of debt, it kind of feels like watching Total Forgiveness at certain points with Gunny's storyline because it's just like, oh, dude, no, like, dude, please. But I love him so much, and he's so silly and goofy. And even though he is the Lou Wilson character that I have the least personal attachment to, he still does have to go in this top category because he's perfect. Moving on. We have Margaret Encino. I love her. I love her. I love her. She's great. Honestly, and I wasn't really thinking about this going in, but I think Margaret Encino is another This Is Me Who Sold You My Likeness because her girl boss tendencies, the way she slays so hard, but is also like on a personal level, like so deeply pathetic and like fucked up. Like that's so me and that's so real, and I like get her so so much for that. So I think she definitely goes there. I love like everything with her, and I'm not gonna remember her love interest name. I definitely should have. Actually, give me a second. I'm gonna find it. Okay. Look at me being a good YouTuber. I found her name. It's Lucian. Hopefully, I'm not messing up the pronunciation because I just don't remember. But I loved that entire storyline. I think it's very relatable. Ali is just really good at capturing like quintessential both lesbian and trans masc experiences. And as a trans masc person who never identified as a lesbian but has had many guys, I have so many lesbian friends, and also just like a bit of a lesbian phase that I went through. That sounds awful. I love that I'm the worst guy ever. But I had a bit of a lesbian phase. I identified with lesbians heavily for a little bit. They're just so good at capturing some of those quintessential early on experiences in these identities. And Margaret Encino and Lucy's whole relationship is so quintessential lesbian, especially like at the end when she like sees her again and sees how pathetic she is and immediately is like, okay. Anyway, I think we should just be friends. That's so real. That's actually like the most real ever. And I love Margaret, and she's me. Next up, we have Riva. I liked Riva. Guys, I liked Riva, and I feel bad that this is happening with now two of Siobhan's characters, but I'm gonna have to put her in meh. because ultimately that is just kind of what she was to me. I mentioned earlier that there is another character who kind of had the Kugrash story arc of only being relevant to one very specific season and one very specific campaign, and that's Riva. She felt like Siobhan had kind of mapped out her arc going into the season, which there's no issue with that, but I don't know, I just didn't love her. Like she was fun, she was cute. Another really good character design, I have to say, but ultimately I just kind of felt meh about her. I don't have a lot to say. But this next character I do. This next character is Sundry Sydney. I love Sundry Sydney. I think this is one of and like all of Emily Axford's characters, I feel like I've been giving some type of like qualifier to be like, this is one of the best characters, one of the most meh 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 characters. And it's like, okay, you are clearly in love with Emily Axford. We can tell. But I love her. I really feel like Emily Axford and Beth May need to meet because they play a lot of kind of parallel characters, and I just think they would get along. Yeah, Sundry Sydney feels like a very Trudy character from the Peachyville Horror, the newest season of Dungeons and Daddies. And I think that Sydney also is able to balance like a really she's able to walk a very, very fine line between like having some of the funniest and craziest and out there moments in the show, and then also having some of the most emotional moments in the show, and like trying to find like a family and an identity outside of just being created as like a machine and like the Swiss Army wife. I love that. I love that so much. But yeah, she's a really great character. I Yeah, she's going in that top category. I hate to say it. It's really, really, really not my fault that Emily Axford can only create like my little baby girls. That's just that's not on me. Oh, also, I have to acknowledge this because I don't know like when else I would get to like say this in my life. I forget because it has been a while since I watched Starstruck Odyssey. I forget if Barry and Sid like actually officially become a thing at the end of the season. I feel like they maybe do, but it's so funny that Starstruck was the season that like there's the most sexual tension between the two of them because like all of the rest of their characters and everything else like are just not characters that would be like romantically involved in any way, shape, or form. And so it is really fun to see like a Murph and Emily PC romance because it's like I know it would be like super easy for them to do that, but also like they're so cute all the time. And I was like rooting for the two of them the whole time, especially because they do both have that backstory of like being created for one specific purpose and being created to be a machine. And then just kind of getting tossed aside or like losing your family and not having a family. And I think that what they were just kind of like made for each other, maybe literally and figuratively. Anyway, so finally we have Skip. Skip, he's baby boy, basically. Like when I think baby boy, when I think baby girl, I think about Skip. He's just so cute and fun, and it's like such a good Zach character. I do wish sometimes that we had gotten more of Norman, uh, because I think that Skipper, rather, is such a unique character for Zach, and we don't see Zach playing assholes most of the time, or at least that type of asshole. We don't see him playing. He has kind of more than anyone. I think Zach does have an archetype that he sticks to, which is mainly just like well, I don't know. We see Lepan, but Lepan was also pretty short-lived. So I would have liked to see him play Skipper more because I think it was really fun and we got to see just how talented of an actor Zach is. But Skip just feels very comfortable for Zach, like this sweetheart with like a past who's trying to like have a better life or like kind of escape like what people are expecting of him, et cetera, et cetera. And yeah, he's great. I think he is going to go in good character, no personal connection, because I just don't have like a super strong connection to Skip. Besides, like, I think he's baby girl and awesome. Moving right along, never after time. Okay, so Never After. I know that people have a lot of mixed opinions on Never After, and I do as well. But ultimately, I do love the season. I think it's some of Brennan's like best DMing, frankly, even if the PCs at times are not letting him explore some of the topics that he wants to explore, clearly. I think that we do get some like good emotional moments and some really good horrific moments, obviously. But I think we do succeed in getting some good emotional moments, but it is a little bit upsetting the pushback we kind of see from the players. And I'll get into that with each individual character. Rosamund, Princess Rosamund. I love her. This is an excellent Siobhan character. Honestly, for me, besides Adine, no, that's not true because Ruby. But I love Rosamund. She When I think of Never After, one of the images that immediately comes to my mind is that opening scene with her, with like the vines growing out from inside of her. It's such a good visceral scene, and her having to like cut her own vines off of her and then like escape and just like being covered. I love like looking on I love going on Tumblr. I love finding like fan art of these characters and like what shape they would actually be in while this is all happening. And it's just so, so cool. And Rosamund, I feel like, is one of the characters who we do see genuinely try to engage with the story more than some of the others. And I feel like some of the social faux pas that we get from the other characters, we don't see as much in Rosamund. But ultimately, I do feel like as the season went on, her importance to the story, not importance, but just her relevance to the main story arcs were definitely still there, but she just kind of faded into the background a little bit. So I'm putting her in good character, no personal connection. Okay. So talking about Ilfa Snorkelson, I like cannot be normal about her, and I need you guys to know that right up front. She is immediately going to go in this top category. I love her so much. Honestly, I'm actually putting Ilfa in the second category for me in middle school. Emily Axford, I clearly think is one of the most talented like D&D players alive. I But I think like her best acting ever and best storytelling ever absolutely comes down in Ilfa. I think she does kind of a great job. I think she does an amazing job in every season, but I think Ilfa is on another level of good. And the story that is told with Ilfa, and also the way that you get like a new perspective on the Little Red Riding Hood story with Ilfa is so mind-blowing. It's just she's such a good character. And once again, like with Rosamund and her opening scene, I think about the scene where Ilfa realizes, or where Emily realizes rather, what's going on with like the cycle of things. I just think that there's something really powerful to feeling and knowing on a level that like there is something that everyone around you is going to think is like wrong with you. And there is something that makes you like inherently different from your family, your friends, whatever. And knowing that that is true, but then being able to like find a way to live despite that, and not only live despite that, but also find a way to like help others like you. It is she weirdly, and as I'm like speaking this now, I'm realizing that she kind of has like a trans narrative almost in terms of, yeah, well, I guess she's a werewolf, and werewolf is inherently like a trans and queer narrative. But it is really interesting because her being able to like when she is the wolf and like having the conversation with the other little girl that has become her and being able to guide her and help her. I think that's so, so beautiful. Just everything with Ilfa is so great. And also, again, some of the funniest goddamn moments of the entire season, fucking popcorn balls. I think about Ilfa every day. And I just can't, I will never get over her. And yeah, I think they all all of these guys did some really interesting things with the fairy tales that they chose to take on. And there's specifically one other character, and I'm sure if you've watched the rest of this video, you can guess what character that's going to be and who plays that character. But we'll get to them. But it's only male characters left. And also, who am I trying to fool? But Ilfa, it's just so solid and everything is there. And I love her so much. Next up, we have Gerard. What the fuck is up, Gerard? I like thinking back, I hate it because like a lot of the things I dislike about Gerard, it's like, oh, this is another Murphys playing a me character. Like, I don't want to put Gerard here. I don't wanna do that. Like, I'm looking you in your eyes. Trust me, I don't want to say that Gerard is just like me for real. Unfortunately, that might be the world we're living in at this point in time. I think him choosing to just stay a frog towards the end is really like such a good decision. And I think the thing that really stands out to me about Gerard is like his ending. Uh, because Gerard does try. Well, he might not try with the other princesses, and I'm gonna get into the discussion about the princesses soon, trust me. But there's specifically one character who like I just have to bring it up with, and so like when we get to him, we'll talk about it. But Gerard does maybe try with the princesses more than some of the others, but like he really tries with Elodie and he tries so hard and does everything like for Elodie at the end of the day. Like even when he's like selfish and self-centered, like he does truly, truly love Elodie. And I think it is like a really good decision on Brennan's part to be like, you may feel that way, but that doesn't mean she's going to reciprocate and is going to love you after like what you've become over the years. And I think that's just really real. And it's another very real and true to life character. Like, even though he's a guy who turns into a frog, I think Gerard is absolutely like a real guy out there. There's a billion Gerards. A lot of your boyfriends are probably Gerards before all of the development of Never After. Guys, Guys, I want you to guess how I feel about Pinocchio. How do you think I feel about Pinocchio? Do you think do you think perhaps he's going to be in the top category? Do you think so? Oh, you would be right. Yeah, guys, it's no surprise that I love Pinocchio, but thinking about Pinocchio, I actually saw this thing on Tumblr the other day, and I'm going to find the post and I'm going to put the person and their information somewhere on the screen, I promise, because this is not my original thought, but I am going to like muse on it a little bit more just because I think it's so interesting and this person was so, so smart for pointing this out. And I don't remember if it's something that was brought up in the season itself or if it's something that Lou has talked about, but it is like it's making me want to go back and see like is that something that comes up. I think first of all, I love Lou's commitment to only playing black characters and being like all of my characters are black no matter what. And I think with Pinocchio that is especially really important. And what this Tumblr post said was I think there's something really poignant about Lou Wilson playing Pinocchio because being a young black boy, you at times don't feel like you are a real boy in the way that like your white counterparts are because you do have certain aspects of your childhood taken away from you and people don't treat you like a child. You're often matured way beyond your years very early on because of your race and because of the way that society views you. And so many black boys throughout history have been hurt and attacked and their childhoods have been ruined and shortened because of people assuming that they aren't just boys, they aren't just children at the end of the day. And I had not thought about Pinocchio like that at all before. And I just think that this interpretation of Pinocchio is one of the best, especially since there have been like a lot of Pinocchio adaptations and there still are going to be coming up. And Yeah, I just think this is such a unique take on it. And I also think that, well, Pinocchio does have a lot of moments of immaturity. It makes a lot of sense because he is a kid at the end of the day. And I think that we see that, like, while he has moments of levity, a lot of his posturing is because of just how scared he is, especially when his stepmother, when we find out like everything about his stepmother and all of that. That's terrifying. And I think having that as like a reasoning for him interacting with NPCs the way that he does makes a lot more sense than the excuses we get from some of the other PCs of this season. Okay, next we have Pip or Puss in Boots. I love Pip, and I think that his character also does a really good job at like exploring the cyclical nature of these types of fairy tale characters. I love the stuff with the fox and the rabbit. I think that's all very cool and adds a lot of really good depth. But ultimately, like, if I have to be honest, like, he's going to go, I know already, he's going to go in good character, no personal connection, because I think he is a good character. But and I think once again, we have a case of him reacting and some of his social faux pas with specifically the princesses. We do get an explanation for it. And that's because he is kind of this trickster and he's supposed to be someone who you can never really trust what he's saying. And so I do like that. But I don't know, like, I didn't feel much of a personal connection to him. There wasn't anything that I was like, oh, yes, like, I see you and I see and I see like what you're about. Lastly, we have Mother Goose. Timothy Goose. I love Timothy. I have to say that up front because of how critical I'm going to be about Mother Goose from here on out. I love Timothy. I would put him in like, I can see there being a world where I put him in This Is Me, Who Sold You My Likeness, because it's an Ally Beardsley character, it's gay man character, it's like I love all of like the personal stuff that we see with Mother Goose. Like I love his life from the fairy tale. I love the stuff with his husband and with his son. I think that's all wonderful. Like the bones when he's just like holding the bones of his son, like that's such a gorgeous scene, such gorgeous imagery. And I love like all of the stuff with his story, even though like it's Mother Goose, and so like how much of the story there. However, I think as a character, a lot of Mother Goose is lost because I think that Allie is kind of still in like a starstruck mindset when it comes to Mother Goose. I feel like some of the really good alley acting chops that we see in Fantasy High Junior Year and we see in Crown of Candy and we see in some of these other seasons just aren't there with Mother Goose. I mean, we still definitely get emotional moments. We still get some cool scenes, but I think there just is a disconnect for and I don't want to say for Allie, so I'll just keep talking about the character, but I don't know, I feel like it is very much like an actor thing. Here, not to critique Allie in any way, like Allie Beardsley, I love you. If you ever on an off chance ever did see this, like please don't see this as like a critique of you or your character or anything. Um, but I think that the way that Timothy is played at certain points just doesn't necessarily feel true to the character, if that makes sense. I, especially with the princesses, I don't think like a lot of like how silly they get and how rude to the princesses they are, particularly how rude Mother Goose is to the princesses, doesn't make sense with this character that does have a connection to a lot of like young people and a lot of children and understands and ultimately I feel like Mother Goose does really understand like complex people and how I feel like more than some others, Mother Goose has had a story and had a life that teaches him that like just because someone is presenting as a certain way or has made certain decisions in their life, that doesn't mean they are that and they are only that. And yet he's still so cruel to the princesses. And I really don't get that. And I really just don't know where that came from. And it is, I think, the biggest fault of Never After. That entire, like, all of the stuff with the princesses could have gone so differently, and there could have been another path there. Because, yes, I think that some of them were definitely not good people, but I think that there was just an unwillingness to even engage with them as full characters, even though I do think they were potentially, I mean, I don't know. I'm not Brennan. I haven't spoken to Brennan about this, but I think that there was a lot of depth that they could have gotten into with the princesses. Like, they had their own entire stories. They were their own entire, like, spins on their narrative, and the PCs just decided to not really engage there. And that is a little upsetting to me. But and I think that's kind of generally the way that people feel about the season. But ultimately, like, at the end of the day, I think that there was some really great storytelling done besides that in the season, and I can't forget that, even when I am a little bit upset about the way that the princesses are treated. I think it's a similar thing to the way that some people feel about the way that Kipper Lily and all of the rest of her, the high five heroes, the why am I forgetting what they're called? Oh, the Rat Grinders. Duh. Duh. Hello, fake fan. I think the way that people think that the Rat Grinders were treated, and how, like, there was no attempt to, like, bring them over to their side and whatever, whatever. But I don't know. I feel like with the princesses, there was potentially, because also the Rat Grinders, you couldn't get through to them because they weren't themselves. And also they had died. They weren't the people who they once were. We see that especially with Ruben. And so I feel like it makes sense that they took the strategy that they did of just not even really treating them like full people with their own stories, because they weren't in that case. Like, they were not themselves, except for Kipper Lily. But I feel like the princesses are a different story. I feel like there could have been a road to talking with them and understanding them that just wasn't taken. So all that to say, I think that Mother Goose does have to go, and it's complicated because it really is complicated. While I do have much more positive feelings about Mother Goose ultimately than I do probably the three other characters in It's Complicated, it just is complicated, and that's the way it is. So yeah, this is my completed tier list. Thank you for watching this video. I know it's been very rambly. I will definitely have to do some heavy editing on this, but I've had a lot of fun talking about Fantasy High, not just Fantasy High. Hello. I've had a lot of fun talking with you guys about Dimension 20. This is very much my special interest. I have so many things to say about it all the time. If you would like to see me make tier lists for other than Dimension 20 seasons, I really need to catch up. There's just a couple that I didn't get around to watching. I could definitely do that because I have some very strong opinions on the other seasons too, or any other D&D show. There's not a lot that I watch besides Dimension 20, if I'm going to be completely honest. Dungeons and Daddies is my other main one, but hey, the Dungeons and Daddies brain rot has been so real lately. So there's room there. So let me know. Let me know. But yeah, I would love to see some discussion about these characters, because I know that my opinions are very biased, as I'm sure all of ours are. Their opinions at the end of the day. But I think that these five people and Brennan, and with Brennan's influence, have created some of the most interesting characters of all time. And I love them. I love them all. Even if I've been harsh on them here, I do ultimately love all of my little babies. And yeah, and I would love to hear what you guys think too. So let me know. And thanks for watching.